Hello, and welcome to Breast Cancer Conversations, a podcast brought to you by survivingbreastcancer.org. I am Laura Carfang, breast cancer survivor and founder of survivingbreastcancer.org, a nonprofit organization providing community, education, and resources to empower those diagnosed with breast cancer and their caregivers from day one and beyond. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to another episode of Breast Cancer Conversations. Today's episode is a little different and very meaningful. When someone is diagnosed with cancer, the focus is naturally on the patient, their treatment, their survival, their experience. But behind every diagnosis is another person walking that path alongside them. The caregiver, the partner, the person who shows up every day, often quietly carrying fear, responsibility, and love all at once. In this episode, my husband William steps into the role of the host to explore the caregiver's perspective. He sits down with Dr. Eswar Shankar, a cancer researcher at the Ohio State University Medical Center, who shares his deeply personal story of caring for his wife through cancer and the profound lessons that experience taught him about empathy, grief, and purpose.
As a caregiver, the entire pressure was on me, and I had to hold it as much as possible in every possible way.
Sometimes the people who carry the most are the ones we hear from the least.
You have your spouse, they set the rules, and you got to dance to it.
Welcome to the conversation.
Views are dynamic. It changes as we grow, and it's never static. So I'm happy to give my part as a caregiver, what best I can.
How did you get into caregiving? We understand that you've been a scientist for some time with regards to research. What drove your involvement in the caregiving arena?
To be very honest, as I began my career in the United States as a postdoc, the first time I was exposed to the American Cancer Society Relay for Life when I was in Texas at the University of North Texas Health Science Center. And there, it was a very active group that encouraged postdocs as well as other scientists and faculties to join the relay. Especially, they would invite most of us for the advocacy part to speak with survivors. Probably that's the first time that I get exposed to it. But I didn't know somewhere was that nature was preparing me for something bigger. And to some extent, my late wife and I were a part of it. And we would participate in the relay, be there for the whole night. And we would do our bit. You know, I did have a very thick accented language, the English language. But then we still were very motivated by that particular event every year. And we looked forward for it. And it was a whole lot of experience. And that's the first time when we really knew trying to understand what advocacy was and what exactly it meant and how it impacted people. So even as a researcher, we were asked to go out into the society, speak to the community, speak to people. Somewhere it met a mark in me. And as I moved to Cleveland, to the Case Western Reserve University, where the American Cancer Society was a few blocks away. Again, I had invites where I would be designated on Sundays to various communities to speak. And I just kept doing that for some time. But then as you grow as a researcher, the time straps and then you can't do that. But this was somewhere in my heart. Wherever I would get an opportunity, I would passively take it and I would do it. But, wherever there could be a learning in that. But the real denouement came for me when in 2022, my wife, who was a very active person, who would walk miles and who would walk trails, was diagnosed with endometrial cancer. And it was COVID times. COVID was ending, but still going to an ER or meeting with clinicians. It still had its own ordeals to deal with it. And I had just relocated from Cleveland to Columbus, taking up my maiden position as a faculty and starting my first Department of Defense grant. So it says, when it rains, it pours. So the same way, everything happened at the same time. And fortunately, somewhere, these experiences had equipped me to deal with it myself. Because my late wife was very sure that nobody should know it. And she said, you got to deal with it. It's just you and me. And I don't want anybody to know. So that became a yardstick. And so, which means it was more pressure on me. And I had to do it at all angles in the best way possible. Was I right at all angles? No, maybe not. But I had to deliver it in a way that it did not affect anybody else, especially my late wife, whose comfort was more important at that time. And that's the way I entered it. And I had walked through it. And still, even now, I walk in it as much as possible.
So I've got a question for you about that. When my wife, Laura, was diagnosed 8 years ago with breast cancer, we took a different tack, and I asked her not to put on a wig. We recorded videos of her immediately. We put it out on the internet. And then, of course, we started survivingbreastcancer.org. So we publicized everything. And what we found over the course of many years, we started this 8 years ago, that there were an awful lot of cultures that don't allow you to proselytize your spouse's cancer or your family member, and they keep it close to the vest. And I'm just wondering if that is a part of your culture as well.
It was not a part of our culture. My wife was a very private person.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a personality matter. So she was an introvert, and she would internalize a lot of things. And she was a biostatistician by profession. So she had her own way of thinking and her own rational way of thinking, which I had no right to even, you have your spouse, they set the rules, and you got to dance to it. So you can't just say no to that. Especially in such situations, you got to take their emotion quotient to a very great extent. You have to give it a lot of importance. Until one point, and she had 7 siblings above her, and she was the youngest of the 8. And she has a surviving mother today who is 96 years old. And my parents are like in their late 80s. So imagine in these situations, she never wanted this to go out as much as possible. So I had to even none of my closest circle knew about it until a particular stage, because I wasn't asked to speak about it. So I had to be, as I said, as a caregiver, the entire pressure was on me. Mm-hmm. And I had to hold it as much as possible in every possible way.
That was going to be my question. How did you manage to
I don't know. I just did it. Or, probably when we are in such situations, when we know we have to give so much of importance to our significant other or anybody, any dear loved ones who matter to us a lot, we will go to that extent of keeping things to ourselves, because that is what the nature has provided. I really don't have a formula for it, but that is the way it happened. And it just changed my personality totally.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if that was part of the whole philosophy. And in our previous discussions, you had mentioned a couple of other associates where you were working with them and they were basically diametrically opposed with regards to their own philosophy of caregiving. So how did you handle those situations without naming names or relationships, et cetera, from the perspective that we're all individuals and we all internalize differently and we all externalize differently?
I want to take a quick moment and tell you something I'm really excited about. You can now download the survivingbreastcancer.org app directly from the App Store or Google Play. Just search for survivingbreastcancer.org. It is completely free to download, and inside you will have access to all of our support groups, educational programs and webinars, all of our blog content and articles, podcast episodes, and community features to connect with others who understand what you're going through. Everything in one place, because navigating breast cancer shouldn't require 15 open browser tabs. Download the app today.
See, in my view, the first thing that a caregiving gives us is trying to develop empathy as much as possible. Now, when we start developing empathy, one thing that comes along with it is the respect we have for anyone who's around. I'm not saying I'm very respectful, but at least even if an incident happens or I may not accept it at that moment, at least today I'm able to take a step back and I would chide myself and say, no, it is not your space. You have to give the space to that person because we really don't know what they are going through and how they are. So the best thing you do is to just take a step back and allow them to be who they are. And somewhere along the line, if it has to happen, they will come around and be, mo- they could be more open to it. Or that acceptance factor or the acceptance coefficient would go up. So that is the way I have just taken it as of today. And in fact, it's a battle for my own self, even today. But then, it gives me that space to take a step back and go back again and again, revisit it. Each time you grow there. Now, do you want to be right or do you want to grow? This is the options you have. So if you're choosing the second one, then, it's much more easier. It looks like you will be giving in for something, but it's okay. At the larger part of life, it's nothing.
And that's a perfect segue for my next question. How did you take care of yourself? As a caregiver, it's critical that you don't forget about yourself and that you are managing the difficulties from a psychological perspective so that you are taking care of yourself as well as your loved one. So how were you able to do that?
I don't know how I took care of my health or myself at that point of time because there was never a minute that I can spend for myself. But the truth going back down the line was that with my family, I was dealing with a drug addicted brother. So somewhere again, this caregiving part had triggered in there, but because that's a whole lot and the whole family was dealing with it. And it had a certain amount of instincts built in you. But again, then I moved out of the country. I came here, and here it was again a different dynamics because I until the end I had no time to take care of myself on anything, nor did I have time to think of myself because it is one thing after the other, one thing after the other, one thing it just it just goes off on and off. You can't even take a minute off at any point of time. But I somewhere that acceptance factor had just got into me. So I personality wise somewhere I was able to accept it or be a part of it or be involved in it 100%. But the entire thing came to me after the 21st of October 2022 when I say goodbye to my wife, and then later I had to as a Hindu, do all the rituals and finish that. But then dealing that loneliness is something that I had to deal with because you come to an apartment where you had somebody who was with you for 30 years and you had nobody there and you see things of all that she had kept and left and everything. So it was then that those emotions took me deep. But fortunately, I had a spouse who had a spiritual outlook for most of the time. So somewhere her association had prepared me in that perspective. So that had helped me somewhere to build myself or build a certain identity for my own self. So I started looking into that area more deeply and I started going through that area, walking through that path more severely. And that was something that anchored me a bit. But then I made a choice. What is my experience going to has taught me here? What should I do? Should I go out and paint the town red and green? Or should I do something that is more purposeful that can have an impact on the soul? Because life always gives us choices, even in adversity. So when we have an adverse event, that adverse event has a lesson for us. We take a step back, see what the lesson is for us, and use that lesson for ourselves. It is to retrain ourselves. It is to unlearn and relearn ourselves about life. And I just tried to do that as much as possible. And probably that's why I met you in 2020. Even today, I am here talking about it.
Very, very well said. And we're all different. And I think that we have a full appreciation for the individuality of all of us. I remember when Laura was in the thick of things with regards to chemotherapy and radiation. And at the time we were living in South Boston, and her mom, who is a retired RN, 30-year RN in the greater Chicago area, she would call me, and as soon as I'd pick up the phone, I'd give her warm greetings and whatnot. And then I would immediately go and speak to her about how Laura was doing. And she said, I'm not calling for Laura, I'm calling for you, because it's critical that you do take care of yourself too, so that you can take better care of my daughter. And then the message was received. And we, like you, we have gone around the country and we've spoken at some American Cancer Society Relay for Lives as well. And we were plenary speakers, and we would take questions. And from the caregiver perspective, I always liken the philosophy to jumping on an airplane and having the flight attendant give her a safety or his or her safety speech before the flight takes off. And one of the things that they discuss is, in the event that oxygen becomes an issue in the cabin, that they teach you to put on your mask before you put on the mask of somebody that you're taking care of, an elderly person, a child, etc. And I thought that made perfect sense. It was a wonderful metaphor for how we can better take care of those that we love from the caregiving perspective. But as you say, it's difficult. If you really, truly love someone and you're giving your whole heart and soul to them, you suffer with them. And it's quite immeasurable what you go through. So from that perspective, I've got a full appreciation of what you were just saying. I'd like to go and shift gears now and pass along some of the questions that
Definitely.
we receive from our community. And the first one is a great one. How did you deal with your loved ones' up and downs?
Every day was a new learning. Fortunately, somewhere, for me, from the time of her initial diagnosis, something gave me an instinct that I had to be a solid rock person who cannot first show up my emotions. And I had to just be there completely with them. And I had to imbibe or take up whatever they were going through. So I started seeing things from her point of view, than my point of view. I would never try to argue with them. I would never say, you are wrong, I am right. No, if waking up, if saw my late wife in a good mood, yes, fine. If she was not in a good mood, especially when it came to chemo and a couple of days before chemo, they would start, when they have to go for their blood test. And it used to be really not great scenario. So you had to be as calm as possible as they go through whatever they're going. You can never judge them. You can never say anything, but you have to keep doing what you're doing. In amidst of all these tantrums, they would say, I'm hungry. I need food. Okay. Everything had to go side by side, and you had to take care of your daytime job as well. So as accepting them for who they are and what they are at that point of time with no judgment, and giving their emotions and their feelings the first priority. And that's it. You don't have a choice for yourself at this point of time. You don't matter down the line at this point. What matters is what your loved one wants. That when you give that kind of importance to them, then things became easier. It was difficult for me, but during that process, I tried to learn as much as possible, and at least I was 20 to 30% of what I am saying now, I executed it, I would say, because the opposite party is not there to give me my actual evaluation, but I would so pessimistically put it as 20 to 30%. But then the important part is that you don't matter at that point of time. What mattered is what your loved one wants. If they are in a good mood, yes, celebrate it with them. If they are not in a good mood, then accept it and understand them and try to do your best, what best you can for them that can calm them down and help them to take good rest.
Well said. I know I've got a couple of little short anecdotes on that. When Laura would be sitting there and she was undergoing aromatase inhibitors and the associated steroids that they would pump into you to activate all of the treatment, et cetera. And she'd be just full of life. And she's sitting in the chair and she's getting the infusion. And she would speak to me about, well, let's do this and this right as soon as we leave the hospital. We'll go out, we'll grab a bite to eat, we'll do it. And I would say, absolutely, dear, of course. And knowing full well that she was just gonna crash. And so I purchased this beautiful fleece blanket and I would take her home. I would put her on the couch, cover her with the fleece blanket, and she'd be nice and cozy. She'd fall sound asleep for hours on end because it just took so much out of her. The other thing two other things with that, I used to buy flowers every single week. And because she was in the throes of her treatment plan, she never saw them. And we had a very small apartment at the time, and they'd be sitting right on a coffee table in front of the couch where she would be resting up. And one week she said, "Those flowers are beautiful." And I looked at her and quizzed her. I said, "Is this the first time you've noticed them?" And she said, "Yes." Well, I said, "I've had flowers every single week all through your treatment plan." And she just looked at me. She said, "I'm so sorry." I said, "Don't. They were there for you." The other thing that I did, recognizing the ups and downs, at that time, we didn't have a TV. So I went out to buy a TV and she said, "What's that for?" I said, "We need some comedy in our life. We need to be able to relax. We need to be able to laugh a little bit." And sure enough, I think we watched all of the comedy shows or the Netflix specials, et cetera, just to try to ease the burden of the deleterious side effects of being diagnosed and treated for cancer. But well said. All right, moving along here. How do we as caregivers take care of ourselves? There we go. I think we've already covered that. But when we're so focused on our loved ones, ideas shared include, I see a therapist weekly. I think we've already covered that. So probably don't need to engage in that one. My loved one is doing well on the treatment she is receiving for her, and her tumors are shrinking. I am feeling intense anxiety, just like your loved one, and fears despite or in the face of this good news. She is too. What is this about?
We are all human, and more than anything else, it's so biological. Even though we know that there is a progress, there is a fear within us. The fear that will everything be all right? Is it going temporarily or is it going permanently? And especially as a caregiver, when you walk down with them before treatment, after treatment, when you are with them as they have their chemos and you stand by them, it's a very difficult task for you because the thing is the fear grips in you because you could see the subtle changes that they go through as the drug goes through them. It is something that pounds on you, that it shivers you sometimes. It just gives you a shivering when you are with them, though you are at the best place where the best possible treatment has been given still, because it's we have humans, and it is this human nature that, wherever we are, it's going to grip you. So accept it. First thing is the accept. Yes, I was anxious. I had the fear, and just to tell you, William, I was all alone. So I had to be the person who, when she saw, had no expression. There was no feelings, or I had to stand as a rock always. So which means I can't even turn around and shed a tear on my eye, or I can't. Of course, coming from an Asian society, for men to cry is not a good thing. Mm-hmm. So, and we were under the British, so, we have those tendency of holding up everything to ourselves, and we can never be vulnerable. So, that crappy attitude is with us. So we just keep it with ourselves. So even now, as men, you have an ego. Oh, I'm not supposed to react. I'm not supposed to show my vulnerability. That stupidity is still there in us. So we keep it to ourselves. But ultimately you're a human.
Mhm.
You have feelings, you have everything. Accept that. That's the first thing is the acceptance. As we accept our dear ones and as we accept our dear ones' natural selves, we have to somewhere bring in that acceptance. Fear becomes a part of it. As much as joy or relaxation comes, there will be a sense of fear. And we have to we have to take the bull by its horns. So you have to look at fear. It's a great lesson, in fact, to look at fear and just see it. Yes, it is there right in you. Are you able to overcome it right away? No, you will not. But at least start dealing with it. Accept it. My dear friend, you're here with me. Come, let's go have a cup of coffee. That's it.
Well said. And I think you've just answered that next question that was submitted. I have not allowed myself to cry about my loved one's situation. So I think that you've gone into that. Most recently, I follow a lot of musicians, and one of them is Bobby Weir from formerly the Grateful Dead. And he just passed away, and he was being interviewed. He had lung cancer, and he was being interviewed about death. The questioner asked, "Are you intimidated? Are you apprehensive?" And he said, "No." He said, "Death is the reward for a life well lived." And I just thought that was very profound. So I guess we can roll into that one as well.
Yes. Well, what is it that you're going to achieve by fearing it? And you've come here, you have a certain set of duties to do, or you have a certain purpose to work. And I know whether you are from the East or the West, you have that philosophy that you have certain things to perform. You perform that. As long as you are on that stage, you dance well, do what you got to do, and gracefully as you finish each role, gracefully move away. You don't want to stay there for too long and then, make it uncomfortable for others. You just have to just gracefully take it and then leave it as time comes, because nothing is permanent. No role is permanent for you. You have to accept, and life is a good teacher. It just gives you that acceptance. So you just take it with grace and give it out with grace and just keep moving. That's the best thing that at least I'm trying to learn.
Wonderful. Moving on here, I have learned to call the doctors at 11 in the morning. It works. You reach them, they respond. So from the caregiving perspective, accompanying your loved one, what role would you suggest that the caregiver play at the oncology visit or visits with the nurse navigation team or the surgeons, et cetera?
In my family, my wife was the control and she was the lawmaker. So the first thing I would have to do is to take her instruction on what I can say and what I cannot say when I am at the doctor's office. So as a spouse of 30 years, that's the first thing that I did. Because she being a very private person, I just gave importance to her, because then whenever she was in I was with her along with her doctor's office. She would, as they spoke to her, I would be more a listener, and I would give my thoughts to my wife, who would address it, because rather than me telling it about her in front of the doctor and making her embarrassed, when it came out of her, and if she felt it was important to address, then I would just make her do it rather than me saying something.
Mhm.
Unless she was in a state where she was unable to speak, or she was at that point, I would address it. And, for most part, she was very active. Her brain was active. Even 2 days before her passing, she had paid off all the credit card bills and everything, and she had kept everything. So you could imagine I was with a very alert person. And with such alert people, and, women have much more memory than men. We tend to forget our faults very easily. But they would remember everything right from the day we got married, especially the dumbest thing that we have done. So we got to be very careful.
So that brings us to a great next question. Dealing with anger. Ideas shared include removing yourself from the situation so that it doesn't escalate, calling someone to help, advocating for yourself, taking a walk, physical release, breathe deeply, relax, meditate, do some yoga, use distraction. How would you counsel a caregiver who's experiencing that kind of a situation?
Number one, The first thing that the caregiver has to realize that as long as the significant other or the loved one you're with them, the priority is them. So when they become priority, then you have to just have that as the basis for yourself. Never show you can show your happiness, you can show your love, you can show your affection to your loved one. Never show any of your frustration or anger or your sadness to them at that point. That's ground rule. That's the way, because it's like dealing children. That's number one. Number two, I never had time for myself. So I don't know during caregiving what are the things you could do to relax yourself. Because I was packed from 4 a.m. till midnight. I was packed every day because I was the only person dealing with it.
Mhm.
So I did not have time to think of myself, and it was 7 days a week for me. So I did not even have time for myself on anything any unnecessary things. I found everything unnecessary taking care of myself at that point of time because I didn't have any support. So I had to do everything, the groceries, everything I had to do. And my home was still not arranged and everything were in boxes because as we came in from Cleveland to Columbus, she has been diagnosed. And, you know, I was going through a whole lot of things. So I had literally no time for any of those. So in that perspective, but if you have a good support system where somebody can be with your loved one for some time, then look into what interests you. That can give you relaxation. If it is music, it is music. If it is something like you can go to the gym and work out, or if you have a dog, or if you have something, take a walk, or or even attend a caregiving session somewhere. If there's a group, go talk to them. You could do all that. It's all your choice. And it's a matter of choice. And another thing, I was very sure I wanted to be with my loved one for every minute that I had the opportunity. And I didn't want to spend anything other than that. So that became a very big priority for me. And when I look back today, I'm glad I did that because whether it is rain or shine or snow or good mood, bad mood, worse mood, I was there every minute, every second.
Mm.
And that gave me a lot of closure. The one prime rule that I would suggest to any caregiver is that never think of yourself, think of the loved one. It's very precious.
Mm.
And that precious moments can never come back. Not all moments will be happy moments,
Mhm.
but still be there, be every second, be every minute. It's a difficult thing. I know it. And each personality is different. To handle it, it needs a lot of tenacity. I understand that. But the thumb rule is if you have somebody to swap that place for you for some time, take the minimal duration of time. Spend most of the time with your loved one.
Mhm.
That is more important, I would suggest. I may not be this may not be very palatable, but I went through this and this is what I did. So I can only say what I have done.
We have two final questions. The first is, how do I manage my fears as the caregiver?
Accept the fear. We are human. We will have these emotions of fear. I had that fear in me. And even now, at the middle of the night, I wake up. When it comes to my late wife's birthday, or it just comes 2 to 3 days, one day before or one day after Thanksgiving. So you can imagine how it would be for me when the entire country celebrates. I will be at a very vulnerable place.
Mm.
Same way in February is a month that shakes me because that's the time when my wedding anniversary comes. So these are moments where you feel really compelled. It's a very downslide. So for me, October through December first week, I'm in a most it just puts me down, but I accept it. I accept it. Same way in February, I accept that a lot. First, accept your fears, accept your sadness because you're human. But at the same time, don't get wallowed into it. Just see what best you can do that you are going through it. How can you make difference in somebody else's life? That is more important there. If we keep sitting, we will keep sitting. Why do you want sympathy from people? take this out, make it more creative in such a way that you get a positive feeling of it.
In your particular case, and in the case of many caregivers, your loved one will pass away. And so naturally, there's the stages of grief. How do you deal with that grief? You just touched upon quite a bit of it, but if you want to close the conversation with grief and legacy, what would your thoughts be on that?
I don't know about legacy because I don't have children. So, I don't have that. But at the same time, our grief is personal. At the same time, what has our grief taught us? What did this teach me ultimately at the end? I have a choice. Can I bring some difference in somebody's life? Can I do something better that I can impart to this society? It doesn't mean statistically, I don't want 100 people. If I can bring a change in one person's life or two people's life, that itself is a way that I can change my fear or my sadness or my grief into a certain level of satisfaction. I don't know about the happiness quotient because that is something very relative. So I would say this could at least translate your experiences, your sadness, your fears can at least translate or transform or touch somebody else's life. And probably this is what your significant other wants. Like my significant other always wanted to do something that can contribute to the society, though she was an introvert. But she had her own way of doing it. She didn't want many people to know it, but she had certain ways. So I tried to follow what I can. And there would be words resonating. The other day I was going through my closet and I saw a couple of notebooks in which she had written several things. Tears poured my eyes because very meticulously, and give it to women, they are much more meticulous than men. So she had written everything in a very organized fashion. And when I open her handbag and see all the credit cards and driver's license and everything she had kept, there's a certain way I never even touch it even today. I just leave it there. But it's a whole lot. But then how can this bring a change in somebody else? How can this is all I try to do. I try to practice. I don't know if I'm successful, but this is what I've been trying to do since the last 3 years. The first year was very difficult, but then I came across a lot of very good humans when I opened up myself, and I extend my gratitude to all of them. They all touched my lives in every way. And at one point, I was about to commit suicide, and there was one young gentleman who just pulled me out of that. Oh. And so, I have so much of gratitude to them, gratitude to this universe, and that I cannot say more. The division that I'm working, Dr. Christian Rolfo, my former boss, Dr. Bhuwana Ramaswamy, all of them, the administration at the Ohio State University, the empathy that the entire society gave me, despite my Dr. Dan Stover, Dr. Gatti Mays, all these people were very supportive that when all these, my current colleagues, my former colleagues, my former mentor, Dr. Sanjay Gupta, he in fact came from Cleveland, and whole lot of my other friends who were with me. So when the entire universe has given you so much of affection and love, it becomes your duty that your sadness and your fears have no more precedence. You have a responsibility here to transform and disseminate what best you can for the betterment of humans. That's it.
That is perfect. And it's a great way to end the recording. I was asked at one of the San Antonio breast cancer symposiums by a friend of ours who manages an advocacy group down south. And she said, how does it feel to hang out with women who have had their breasts reconstructed or removed or whatever? And I just looked at her and she was talking about, was there a certain stigma, I guess, that I saw there? And I said, I have 30,000 friends with breast cancer. This is my world, and I'm happy to be a part of it, and I'm very happy to help. Dr. Shankar, it was wonderful having you on the show today, and I know that we will be doing a few follow-ups. So,
William, it was wonderful talking to all of you. At the same time, I take this as an opportunity to thank the Ohio State University Wexner Medical Center, the Division of Medical Oncology, and the Department of Internal Medicine for being very supportive to me and my research. And when I was doing all this all alone, the entire group was very supportive. My late former boss, Dr. Bhuvana Ramaswamy, her team, and now after that, then director, Dr. Claire Vescher, and my current director and my boss, Dr. Christian Rolfo, who have been very kind and supportive here and who has taken me with pride and have given me enough opportunity. So there's no words to thank all the wonderful faculties, Dr. Dan Stover, Dr. Gatti Mays, who have been very kind to me, and my collaborators, everyone. It has been and all my friends, all my well-wishers and my wife's family and my own. I just thank everyone here.
Wonderful.
And the kids who just saved me when I was trying to commit in my life, all of them. It's been a wonderful road. Thank you again.
You're welcome. Thank you, Dr. Shankar. It's great chatting with you.
Thank you.
And thank you, everyone, for listening to our show. I would like to acknowledge that all of the information on our podcast is from personal experiences and is not a substitute for professional medical advice. You should always contact your medical care team. If you are looking for specific topics or would like to be a guest on our show, please feel free to reach out. My email is laura@survivingbreastcancer.org. Our show is made possible by our nonprofit, survivingbreastcancer.org, and by our incredible donors like yourself. You can hop on over to survivingbreastcancer.org to sign up for our mailing list, make a donation, and explore the 400-plus programs we offer each year at survivingbreastcancer.org/events. Until next time, keep on thriving.